Michael White, welcome to Beyond Stage Fright. Now, you've been principal clarinetist of the Philharmonia Orchestra, the Royal Northern Symphonia, and also the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. You've got an international reputation as a soloist in a number of different orchestras, both in the UK and abroad, and you're also Professor of Clarinet at Trinity College London. Tell me first of all, what are the particular stresses of being a principal woodwind player in a major London orchestra?
Well, I think it's a very big question. There are a number of stresses, really. I mean, when I got my first principal clarinet job, which was with the Philharmonia Orchestra, the first day at work, I actually had my teacher playing second clarinet, and that was a very odd situation. And it sort of made me think, well, who am I now? Because one day you're basically, in musical terms, nobody, and then all of a sudden you're meant to be somebody. So that was that was a little bit of a stressful situation, but fortunately he was a really generous and lovely guy, and had a great working relationship. The next player I played with said to me, he said, well, it's one thing getting a job, it's harder keeping it. So you can get an idea for the sort of background pressures that are there all the time. That there are always a queue of people who are obviously wanting your job, and if you don't have a contract job, like most London orchestras, not the BBC, but most other London orchestras, you're not really contracted. You're just sort of invited to be a part of the club, but that means that it's a very fragile kind of position, and you're actually only ever booked 1 month in advance. So if you get the schedule in the post, you've still got your job. So there's a kind of a background framework for kind of how you feel about your performance. In that you are very aware that you need to keep the standard up the whole time, and that if things go wrong, it could go very badly for you. I was quite concerned about that initially, and one of the principal players there said to me, look, don't worry about it. It's all down to batting averages. If you've got a great average and you mess up one day, no one's really going to, they're not going to mind too much. Of course, when you start out, you don't have a batting average. So when you start out, it's very, very stressful. And I'd say that my first 2 years there were really pretty hard work, really getting to know all of the repertoire very well. I used to rehearse with them in the morning, come home and just practice all afternoon, and then go back and do the concert in the evening. And that's how, for the first 2 years, that's how I kind of learned really how to do the job. And so it's quite stressful, preparing pieces which are always going to be difficult. There are certain pieces in the repertoire which composers make very, very big demands of you, and I don't care who you are, it's still really, really hard. And a lot of whether you are successful in the orchestral world at the top level is how you deal with that pressure, and whether you have got the kind of character that when that moment comes, you don't crumble, you make it through. And everybody will have their own kind of threshold. I don't believe that we come into this world with a blank slate. I think we are sort of imprinted with a certain character, and certain characters are suitable to that level of stress and others aren't. So I think those are the basic sort of stresses that you feel a terrible responsibility not only to your colleagues, there's a responsibility to yourself, responsibility to the music, and the public, of course, it's a huge undertaking, really.
And what about the particular pressures of being a principal player compared to being, second clarinet, third clarinet?
Yes, as a principal player, of course, you have the playing responsibility of those solos. I mean, in continental orchestras, they call you the solo player, solo clarinet, solo flute. And it's up to you to play those solos, better than anybody else, supposedly. And but more than that, there's also a managerial role within the orchestra. So you're responsible for your section, and principal players, of course, in self-governing orchestras are part of a kind of principals committee, so that they are involved in the sort of artistic direction of the group in a certain way. So there, you know, as a principal player, you take on a number of sort of responsibilities, both musically and managerial.
How would you say that orchestral players in general, in your experience, manage the whole thing of performance stress and nerves?
Everybody knows that it's really, really hard. And there are certain concerts, of course, which are particularly important, perhaps. I mean, every concert should be important, but politically, some concerts are more important than others. And, you know, when you get a very, very difficult repertoire in that situation, of course, everybody's feeling that. But that kind of fear can breed. And if you let it out in the open, you know, you're not really helping yourself or anybody else. So it's a kind of unwritten rule that you basically don't burden other people with your own insecurities or fears about what's about to happen. And everybody, you can literally, you can sense the fear around you on stage. And at the end of that, you know, if you come through it okay, then there's a kind of a deepening respect for all the people there, you know, that you have, that they're able to manage that situation and come through it, and you gain confidence that the people around you are that kind of have that strength of character, so that even when you feel a little bit or a lot scared, you know that there's that incredible support around you, that they won't crumble, that, you know, and they, you know, and you won't either. You know, if you do crumble, you won't be there very long.
Do you think there's any place for being able to support your fellow musicians before you go on stage? Because I know you're saying that it's the unwritten rule that you don't talk about things, but do you think there is a place there for that?
On the day, actually, no, I don't think there is, because you know, it's all done by that time. It's just a matter of getting yourself in the right place in your head, and you know, people have all sorts of routines for, you know, how they do that. Other people joke around a lot, you know, try and, you know, sort of reduce the tension in the air. Other people, you know, soloists, you know, you might just go and take a shower and just kind of try and wash away that tension. That's what I do, and I think there's a lot of there's a place for it, dealing with it away from the event, but close to the event. You know, it's just there. I mean, I remember my trial for Philharmonia. I was playing at that Pavarotti Hyde Park concert. You know, and it was a big deal event. You know, and there were a number of big clarinet solos in that piece, in that concert, and cameraman was walking around, because it was a televised event, of course. He said, "Don't worry, mate. It's only going out live in 35 different countries." So, you know, I mean, okay, yeah, it's a big moment, not only for the concert, but also for me at that time. It was kind of like, if I mess up, I'm not going to get this job. If I do well in this event, it's likely that I will get a job.
How do you manage your own particular performance stress in that situation, an orchestral situation?
Well, I think one of my primary kind of features is that I'm really stubborn, and I don't like to be beaten by anything. I get very annoyed with myself. Actually, I'll tell you a story. First time I ever performed, this was a kind of a really important moment for me. It was in the Bournemouth Music Festival, and I played a tango by Albéniz, which is not a particularly difficult piece, but it's the first time I got up and played in public, and my knees were shaking like anything, and I hated every moment of it, actually. And but I came second. And I was really pissed off, actually. And I went home and I took my clarinet and I threw it underneath the stairs, and I just said to my mum that I'm never playing that thing again in my life. And you know, I was really fed up, and because I felt I'd let myself down, that my body, my brain, and my body had let me down. And actually, to be honest, I've had that struggle the whole time. I don't feel that I'm a natural performer. I don't really enjoy it that much, if I'm honest. I don't like the process of performing. I love music and I love playing music, but performing is a different thing. I think when you actually have to do it for other people. And actually, the whole thing with students, transforming from a student to a professional, there's a big transformation in your head, in that when we start playing instruments as kids and as students, we're basically doing it for ourselves. And we love the music, we love the way it makes us feel, and we love everything about it. But then, of course, as a professional, it's not about you, or it's not about doing it for you, it's about doing it for other people. And they, of course, have expectations that of you in professional as a professional. They want you to deliver to them what they want, not what you want. You can't generalise, of course, but I think audiences just want to hear they want to see someone enjoying themselves on stage and being relaxed. They want to hear a nice tune. A lot of them. More sophisticated audiences want some sort of insight of interpretation, and it depends on the audience you're playing to, of course. But they expect it to be turned out without any feeling of unease for themselves that you're not really able to do it. They want a polished performer.
Tell me a bit about auditions, because they can be unbelievably stressful for a professional.
Yes, well, when you consider that in the UK, it's become more and more competitive. I think in the last set of principal flute auditions that we had in the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra when I was there, I think we had 250, something like that, people going for it, and certainly in the States, you'll get 5,000 people going for it, maybe?
No.
Something like that, yeah. I went for an audition once at the New York Met, and I was on the shortlist of 300. And anyway, I was number 75, and I went in there. You weren't allowed to speak or do anything. You were allowed to play one C major scale, and it was a screened audition, so they couldn't see who you were or anything like that. So I went in there and I played my excerpts, and I came out again, and anyway, the general manager, the orchestra manager came to me and said, "Okay, what number are you?" So I said, "I'm number 75." He said, "Okay, we didn't take you." and just walked off. It was as brutal as that. But auditions are terrible. Actually, there's a very funny set of animations on YouTube. If anyone wants to type in "waiting room at a clarinet audition," it sort of sums the whole thing up, and people trying to out-psych each other in the waiting room, and all that kind of stuff, and the way that people are trying to deal with those nerves, where it's a make or break situation. It's an awful. Auditions are just dreadful, and they're not representative of what you do when you get the job anyway. So, hey, that's just the way it is.
So how much of being an orchestral musician, particularly principal player, do you think is connected to how you manage pressure?
A lot. I think it's one of the major things, because we're all great sort of front room soloists. I can play loads of concertos in this room absolutely perfectly, and then suddenly when you get there, you get on stage and Captain Paranoia is on your shoulder telling you you're going to mess up any moment, and then of course it's a whole different ball game, and the same thing happens in orchestra. The moment comes and you can see it coming ahead. Often when you have a solo, a really hard solo, I'm thinking particularly maybe of something like Shostakovich 10, and there's a particularly nasty little bit in the last movement for the clarinet, and you've got the whole symphony waiting for it, and it's coming up, and it's coming up, and you think, and I say normally say the same thing to myself. I say, well, this can go one of two ways. This can go really badly, or it can go really well. And which one do you want? And it's just actually it's as crystal clear as that, and you decide which one of those two it's going to be. If you kind of if you don't take responsibility for it, you just say, it's nothing to do with me, it'll go badly. If you kind of really dig in and say, okay, here it is, it's tough. I'm going to deal with it. There's another. I mean, all through your life, sort of little situations can kind of ring true with you. I remember walking down the street once, and there was this guy digging up the road with one of these pneumatic drills, and it was a really hot day, and he stopped for a bit, and I said, God, that looks like tough work. He says, when life gets tough, you got to get tougher. And I thought, okay, yeah, that's good, and it's true, those moments you got to get tougher than the task ahead of you.
What for you are the differences between being an orchestral player, a principal clarinetist, and being a soloist playing a concerto with the orchestra?
Yeah, as a soloist, you have the different responsibility. Of course, you're carrying a lot of the material for the piece, so there's that responsibility. But you're also a lot freer to just play how you want. Obviously within reason. As a soloist in the orchestra, you are kind of straitjacketed a little bit by what's going on around you, that you often will have to fit in with an accompaniment rather than the accompaniment fitting in with you, because it's more complicated because there are the number of people involved in the accompaniment or something like that. So you have to also play in orchestra. I would say you're expected to play with the conventions of the repertoire. And in fact, when I teach orchestral excerpts, to my students, I say, well, this is how this piece goes. And they say, yeah, but I like it like that. And I say, well, the trouble is that no one really gives a shit what you think. And this is how they want it. Do you want to get a job or don't you? So if you want to get a job, you play it like this. If you want to play it like you want to do, you'll be a fantastic principal clarinet of your local orchestra in your front room. And that's it. That's the bottom line. So when you're playing in orchestra, there's a certain expectation from the profession that this is how it goes. And that's unhealthy in my opinion, but that is how it is. And it's due to the lack of resources that the orchestral world has for developing performances that have a limited amount of time to put something together. We know it works like this. We can jig it around a little bit this way and that way, but basically this is how it goes.
What about conductors? Because obviously as a major London orchestra you'll have a lot of different conductors. How different is it with the different conductors, and how much could one conductor really impact the stress and the nerves that the orchestra feels?
Oh yeah, I think that's if you've got an awkward character in front of you, it can make your life misery. That's for sure. I'm really fortunate. I've never really had that experience from a principal conductor or anything like that. I've had some really nice people who are very collaborative in their response, in their way that they work. So, if you, as a principal player, I think you have to offer a lot. So I'm continually kind of throwing stuff out there to them and seeing what their reaction is. Do they like that? Don't they like that? And sometimes they will, and sometimes they won't. And the ones that you build a relationship with, that respect your musicianship, they will allow you a great deal of freedom because they trust you. And over the years, people get to know who you are and what you can do. There are some conductors that really want to dictate every note. I remember Kurt Sanderling having a go at one of the principal players in the Philharmonia, and he said, "Don't play like that. Play it like this," and blah blah blah. And the player said, "Maestro, I've been playing it like this for the last 25 years." And he said, "You can be wrong for 25 years." So that was Kurt Sanderling, and he was. He literally, if he could have played every note for you, he would have done it.
Yes, what's it like when you've got somebody really fantastic in front of you as a conductor?
We're talking about a handful of people here. Okay, and they're dying. but yeah, a handful of people, and when it's working like that, it's absolutely amazing. Because everybody knows that it's great from the first 10 seconds of rehearsal, and it's just going to be fantastic. The person that really sticks in my mind in that way was Evgeny Svetlanov. He was an amazing pianist, and he was a brilliant conductor. He hardly did anything, and all he ever used to say in rehearsal was, a bit louder, a bit softer, a bit faster, a bit slower. See ya. That was just, he didn't have to talk about it, at all. And then when we got to it, it was just electrifying. It was absolutely brilliant because he had such an amazing concept of the piece, and he was able to just make it happen.
So why do you think some musicians get anxious about performing?
Well, I think that our experience of performance comes throughout our training as a musician from a very early age, and I think it's very important that if you have a good teacher, they will always try to provide opportunities for performance which are safe, and you have a very good outcome at the end of it, so that your experience of performance is always a very positive one. That people like they're going to like what you do. They do like what you do, and it's a pleasurable experience as much as it can be for everybody. The problem comes sometimes when people feel that they want to push themselves too quickly, or other people want to push them too quickly into situations which perhaps are a little bit beyond them. And so over time, with repetition of that kind of experience, there's a sort of a negative expectation, or the fact that something didn't go well. Will my next performance be the same? It won't go well. They're not going to like me. I'm going to disappoint myself. And so these sort of things accumulate. It's a bit like rings. If you cut a tree, and you see the rings of growth, and there's a sort of a scar on each ring, and then those scars sort of transfer outwards as it grows as well. So you get a kind of cumulative effect of a sort of a negativism about your performance experience. So it's a long-term effect, and it needs careful management by teachers and the performers themselves, so that they don't put themselves into situations which are too far beyond them. You have to push yourself, of course, but there are ways of doing that. If you got to the sort of stage where actually every time you perform you feel this terrible anxiety, and that no amount of persuading can convince you that it's going to people are going to like what you do. You can either take a long-term approach and do some sort of psychological training to retrain your brain, or start playing easier pieces so that you again have that positive outcome with your performances. That step back is something that people don't really want to do, and it's such a competitive environment that in fact there's not really much space for that. A way in which you can break the cycle of this kind of anxiety is really the use of beta blocker. It's a little bit of a taboo subject, but they are widely taken in the music profession, although people that don't talk about it. I would never advise it myself, or I would advise people to talk to their doctors about it, but of course you can't just say, here, have a beta blocker, But if you wanted to take the physical stress away from a performance, that is a way in which you could break the cycle. And beta blockers will control your heart rate, the amount of adrenaline going into your body. They won't change your psychology. And so along with that, you still have to do this kind of psychological retraining. But I wouldn't say that they are completely out of the question. And certainly for those kind of high-profile concerts, those sort of real important moments, that audition that's going to make or break you, I'm sure everybody's using them. You know, and throughout my career, I've been playing orchestras for about 30 years now. I never took beta blockers, and I've taken beta blockers probably in the last 2 or 3 years on a handful of occasions where I felt anxious about something and that I wasn't confident and that I needed a bit of help. And I regarded it as a tool. It's something which is not habitual. It's not something which I rely on, but helped me in those instances. And so I wouldn't say to people, just don't be scared of it. Use it as a tool under advice from your doctor. Another thing that gives stress over time for performance is a feeling of not being valued in the workplace. The music scene, particularly in the UK, is very badly under-resourced, as in many sectors. But I mean, it's really really terrible, I think, now, and it means that there is even more pressure on players to conform. I think conform in their behaviour, conform in their performances, be uncontroversial, never have an opinion, never take any initiative to put yourself forward, to actually involve yourself in the artistic process. Basically, you can sort of silently, but it's you mustn't take credit for it in any way. So you're in a sense totally squashed as a personality. I think over time that becomes very stressful because you can't really be yourself, and I think that's a major problem in business. Actually, that actually everywhere you go, people say, "Oh, there aren't the characters in the business that were in days gone by," and the sort of personalities that would give these very characterful performances, they're not there. It's all very bland now, and I certainly do think that's true. That the performances we get now are they're sort of standard. They're very polished standard performances.
Would you say that this is more the case in the orchestral world, or is it across the board that you feel that people are undervalued as musicians?
Well, I have major experience in the orchestral field, so I can say for sure that that's true. And I'm not sure about other sectors, but I'm told it's a similar sort of thing. I don't really have that much experience of that, to be honest.
Michael White, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed talking with you.